Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Glad you're here. I want to talk about the Republican convention. Day one was yesterday, and it was fine. I don't know if anything's going to get out of the bubble, right? Is anything from yesterday going to break through? It's one thing to, like, very few people watch this thing, is what I'm saying. And the people who watch this and, like, the full of it, they're political insiders. They're in it. No, they made up their mind, right? The question is, what from these conventions breaks out of the bubble and connects to people who are just casual watchers or politics or maybe undecided people, if those people even exist, right? So did anything break out of the bubble from yesterday? Did anything really move the needle? And I would say the answer is no. And one problem with that is it's the Democrats who control the bubble and what gets out. So something has to be really, really good to break out. If anything were to break out, it would be Maximo Alvarez, right? He was amazing, absolutely incredible. And we need so much more of this. It should just be 2 hours of Maximo Alvarez's every day for the whole week. Just him up there sharing his story of his life about his family fled Castro's Cuba. He says, I'm speaking to you today because I've seen people like this before, speaking to Joe Biden. I've seen movements like this before. I've seen ideas like this before. And I'm here to tell you, we cannot let them take over our country. This stuff is so good. But the media, the gatekeepers, they're not going to let stuff like that get out. Let me back it up a second. I want to get back around to Maximo. Read a great piece the other day from Thomas Klingenstein, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but reaching out to him, hopefully he can come on the air. It's from the Claremont Institute. And he says the Republicans need a mission. We got strategy, but strategy without a mission doesn't do anything. You need a mission first, right? A strategy follows the mission. If there's no mission, there can be no effective strategy. So if I ask you today, hey, what's your strategy today? You're going to say, for what? Right? That's my point. Well, like, what's your strategy for, cooking dinner tonight? Or what's your strategy for getting your job done today? Or what's your strategy for helping your kids with this project for school or whatever, right? What's the mission? You got to know what the mission is. Otherwise, the strategy doesn't matter. The mission's got to be clearly articulated. Then you can talk strategy in order to achieve the mission. A vague and undefined mission, it's going to leave you just this vague and meaningless and doomed to fail strategies. And a major problem with the Republicans is for so long, we've had strategy, but no mission. So strategy for the Republicans would be like freedom, right? Republicans believe in freedom, but for what? For why? That's a strategy, not a mission. Republicans will say they believe in limited government. Okay, it's great. Love limited government. It's a great strategy. But for what? And I don't think Republicans have been able to define this properly. So Thomas here has a proposal. And the mission is to preserve the American way of life. Now, that's going to be called racist. Oh, you mean the American way of life when women couldn't vote and black people were getting sprayed by fire hoses? Is that what you're talking about, American way of life? Here's the deal. If you think that saying, preserve the American way of life, if you think that's racist, then you are the racist. You're the racist. When I think preserve the American way of life, there's nothing racial about it. There's no racial element at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Because one aspect of the American way of life is out of many, one. It's unity. The American way of life is unity. It's opportunity for everyone based on merit. There's nothing more inclusive than that. You literally cannot come up with something more inclusive than that. So I'll say it again. If you think the mission statement of we must preserve the American way of life, if you think that's racist, you are the racist. Now, out of many, one, I say, right? Of course, there's going to be many different subcultures, but we all share fundamental aspects of a single culture here in America. Lots of different ways to define this American way of life, right? Just like, sort of like you succeed based on merit. We value hard work, no matter how humble that work is. We value self-reliance, but also being a member of a community. Family, like extended family, church family, We value observing the law, volunteering to help others. Did I say family, 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 right? Just off the top of my head, and all these things, that's the American way of life. All those things are under attack. Every single one of them. Every single one of those are called white supremacist values, right? You go to one of these diversity, inclusion, and equity seminars, and they're going to show the slide, and I'll say white supremacist values at the top, and it's going to list all the things I just mentioned. Family, right? White supremacist value, merit, hard work, bootstraps. These are all white supremacist values. Every single one of those things are under attack. And they'll tell you, we're not united, we're oppressed. Right? And you shouldn't advance on merit, you should advance based on your identity group. America is not something to be proud of, it's something kids are taught to feel ashamed of. Check this out, this is the 1619 Project's mission statement. All right, this is the mission statement. We aim to reframe the country's history, understanding 1619 as our true founding, and placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the story we tell ourselves about who we are. Slavery is at the very center of the story we tell ourselves about who we are. Wow. You think of America, and at the center, the core of America is slavery. Man, that is not who we are. And this week at the Republican convention, I hope the Republicans just reject that and tell the true story of America and take back the what I would argue is the three most important aspects, or three most important foundations of America. As John Adams put it, John Adams said, family is the foundation where morality is laid. So it's family, religion, and education. Family, religion, education. Make that the center point of the party's mission. And then all the strategy, which we call policy, it follows the mission. And every policy you propose, you ask the question, does this help us achieve our mission? Does this help us restore the American way of life? Now, of course, there's an enemy to this. This guy Klingenstein, he calls the enemy multiculturalism. I don't think that quite gets it right. I came across this term the other day, and I think it's good. It's not, it'll never take off because it's hard to say. It's a funny word, but the concept is there, and I think it's important for us to know. Roger Scruton, who's a great conservative thinker, passed away a couple months ago. He called it ecophobia. Ecos is the Greek word, which means home. And then phobia, right, fear. So it literally means fear of home. This is what we're up against. A fear of home. What does that mean? Check out this quote. It represents the preference. This is Mr. McClay, by the way. We're going to talk to him on the special this weekend. He's from Hillsdale. Ecophobia represents the preference for the distant over the proximate, the cosmopolitan over the rooted, the universal over the particular, the abstract over the concrete, the global over the national, and the national over the local. So you think of that view, and you compare that to like Thomas Jefferson's vision of America and the colonists from like the 1600s to maybe, you could say post-Civil War, 1860s, maybe you could go all the way to World War I. Let me quote again. Tocqueville observed early in our history just how central the proliferation of many lesser forms and levels of association were. Townships, local communities, families, churches, schools, fraternal orders. These and many others dotted the landscape with the kind of healthy forms of local, small-scale community that kept American democracy healthy. That's the home, that's the rootedness that America always was and still can be. Think of the colonists for a little bit, right? These are people who literally left England to flee religious and political persecution, right? So they left, they were living under tyranny, they left the king, they sailed across the ocean to an unknown place. Once you get here, like you just went over a harrowing journey to get across the ocean. And then once you get here, now what? What do you do now? There's no axe man to clear the forest. There's no blacksmith to forge a plow. There's no like ox store where you can go buy an ox to pull the plow, or mill to hone the wood, or carpenter to frame the house, or bricklayer. There's no one. You had to do it all. You, the individual, had to be the forester, the hunter, the carpenter, the farmer, maybe even the soldier. You had to do it all with family. In England, the role of the overlord in England was to, how can I best keep people down? But now you're in America, and the primary concern of the parent was, how can I best raise my children up? With faith, in England, the cathedrals, huge, massive cathedrals made of gold and silver and precious gems, and it was all done to glorify the king and the clergy. But churches in America, there's no cathedrals. They had to be built by hand with wood from the forest over there that you had to cut down yourself. Our churches were simple. Everything was simple. The religious powers in Europe, right? They were far off, distant people. We're going to tell the story one of these days. We did on the radio the other day of the Magna Carta and King John. And one of the last straws was the Pope rebuked King John, and King John cut off all religious everything from the people. So his people weren't allowed to get baptized. They were allowed to get married. They weren't allowed to have like their last rites when they died. They couldn't have mass, like no religion at all. And like, what a weird thing if you're a person, because you're like, hold on, the Pope in Italy and the king here won't let me like have a relationship with God. Like what is going on here? And that led to the Magna Carta, among other things. But in America, the religious power wasn't way far. It was me. It was all of us. It was all of us who make up this church in our town. We can do this all day, and we should actually probably do this all day. But the point of it is, these colonists, our colonists, arranged a society in the 1600s and 1700s all around the rights of family, property, faith, the right to form associations, the right to any profession you want, to invest in any business you want to invest in. And we were able to do that because there was no government, right? There's no oppressive government. There was no far-off, distant government. Everything was done in the town. And we became accustomed to a democracy in the name of Athens and a republic like in Rome. And maybe sometime this week we'll talk about what sparked our revolution. And it was the French and Indian War that the British fought, and they needed money. So the Brits, they cracked down on the American colonies, and that meant more taxes. More taxes meant more control meant more tyranny. More tyranny was exactly what these colonists fled from in the first place. It's entirely why we came over here in the first place, and that's what sparked the revolution. The point is, home, local, individual, family, rooted. That's the nature of a conservative. And it's the defining feature of America. It's always defined America. The rooted. And it still can. But the ecophobics, progressives, people who are scared of the home, they want to make everything bigger, more distant, more federal, more global, more abstract. Reject that. We'll see how much the Republicans reject it this week as they share the true story of America. That's what they need to do. That was my very long way of saying we need to share, don't tell, show. Show the true story of America with men like Maximo. We're gonna play a clip. We'll come back and play a clip from Maximo. And it was just perfect. It's perfect what he did. And we need a lot more of that. We'll play it next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, want to keep talking about the convention. Started yesterday, going all the way till Thursday. Of course, the media, the fawning media, loved last week's convention. Oh, it was stunning. Just so. Rachel Maddow said that Obama's speech slayed her. She said, oh, that speech slayed me. I don't know. I just have a hunch that the media's probably not going to love the Republican convention that much this week. Probably not. Lots of swooning last week. Lots of swooning. Oh, swooning all over the place. Not going to be a lot of swooning this week. Unless you can be swooned by how racist something is. If that's true, then they'll be swooning. Oh, so dark. Did you see Trump the other day? He came out in front of the press and he said, "Hey, everyone, good morning. Hope you enjoyed your convention last week." We don't have a lot of time to do this, but I think it was the Media Research Center, is that the MRC, is that what they are? They did a nice run-through of every GOP convention from 1988 to today, and the questions that reporters asked the VP candidates and the presidential candidate. And from 1988, 92, 96, 2000, all the way to today, every single question is a question that, around the form of, your party is very extreme and divisive. And it wasn't even a question. They would just make that statement, and then maybe they'd wrap it up with like, do you see it that way? Or my favorite was Tom Brokaw, I think, said, will voters buy it? Or like whatever, this picture of you not being extreme and divisive. Right? So it started in 1988, and then it got a little bit worse every convention, and it culminated with Chris Matthews in 2016, who called the GOP convention bloodthirsty. All right? And it's gonna be the same thing this week. This week, all you're gonna hear from the media is about how dark it was. The Republican convention, it's so dark and disturbing. And quite frankly, the darker the media says it is, the better. I want to give an example from this week, but real quick, my favorite convention story. There's the editor-in-chief of Harper's Magazine. He was the editor-in-chief for decades. 2004, he wrote an essay where he was watching the convention, and I was asked a question by a friend, and I was reflecting on that question as I was watching the convention, and then he wrote down this essay. The problem is he published it and it got mailed into people's mailboxes before the Republican convention even started. And he had to admit, he made the whole thing up. And he came back, he's like, well, you know, these conventions are pretty scripted anyway. I had a pretty good idea of what they were going to say. That's how he came back around from that. I guess similarly, I have a pretty good idea of how people in the media, what they're going to say. I'm pretty sure they know what they're going to say already before even watching it. But anyway, here's the point. I should have started off with this. Probably did these segments backwards. The Republicans need to show the American story. Don't tell it, show it. Show who we really are. Actively fight the narrative that we are a racist country, right? We'll see if they do it. They might do it, or they'll take the advice of their political consultants and whiff miserably with the same old lame speeches from swamp monsters that no one cares about. I don't need to hear another teleprompter speech from some politician. Show me people who are living the American dream. And this is why the speech of, does that make sense? Like I saw Congressman Gates spoke yesterday. So I was like, who cares? We need more Maximo Alvarez. Have you ever heard of Maximo Alvarez? Of course not, that's great. It's a guy from Cuba. And he got up there and he told the story of what life was like in Cuba. And he said, by the grace of God, I lived the American dream, the greatest blessing I've ever had. He told the story of how his dad, who had a 6th grade education, told him, don't leave this place. You will never be as lucky as me. And listen to how he ends.
My decision is very easy. I choose President Trump because I choose America. I choose freedom. I still hear my dad. There is no other place to go. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless America.
You can't beat that. You can't beat that. And I want to be clear, he wasn't crying about Trump. He was crying about America and crying about the tyranny that he and his family had, and the sadness that people still today have to live through because of Cuba. And he's like, all these things that Joe Biden's talking about, I've lived this, man. And I love this country. He said, I'm 100% American. You can't beat that. Like, that's as good as it gets in life, stories like that. And you can't beat it. Also, the Democrats can't. What's the Democrat gonna say about that? You're racist? Maximo? You're racist? What are you gonna, you can't. It's perfect. We just need 2 hours of that. That's how you break through the bubble, and that's how you get to people's hearts. Maya Angelou, she said, people will forget what you said. People forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So the advice from the head of the Claremont Institute, again, is to have the mission that we preserve the American way of life. Now, again, the left's gonna frame that as racist, but they call everything racist. So the Republicans can either appeal, or I should say cave, to the 5% of whiners in America who call everything racist no matter what, or can appeal to the 80% of people who want to indeed preserve the American way of life, like Maximo. And there's so many Americans who forget it, who can't fully appreciate this country like Maximo can. And we need to hear from more people like that. Trump gave an amazing speech at Mount Rushmore on the 4th of July. It was great. You got to go back and read it. It was an amazing speech. He just needs to give the same speech every day. He calls the enemy out. He said, angry mobs are trying to tear down statues. This is him at Mount Rushmore. Angry mobs are trying to tear down statues of our founders, deface our most sacred memorials, and unleash a wave of violence in our cities. Many of these people have no idea why they're doing this, but some know exactly what they are doing. They think the American people are weak and soft and submissive. But no, the American people are strong and proud, and they will not allow our country and all of its values, history, and culture to be taken from them. And that speech is beautiful. In that speech, he said, what are you, weak? They think you're weak. Are you weak? Are you submissive? No, I think you're strong. That's great. Called out cancel culture. He said this is the very definition of totalitarianism. He said, make no mistake, the left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. And in doing so, they would destroy the very civilization that rescued billions from poverty, disease, hunger, and violence, and that lifted humanity to new heights of achievement, discovery, and progress. Just ask Maximo. To make this possible, they're determined to tear down every statue, symbol, and memory of our national heritage. And I love this line. This is so good. Again, this is Mount Rushmore. Against every law of society and nature, our children are taught in school to hate their own country and to believe that the men and women who built it were not heroes, but villains. The radical view of American history is a web of lies. All perspective is removed, every virtue is obscured, every motive is twisted, every fact is distorted, and every flaw is magnified until the history is purged and the record is disfigured beyond all recognition. Said before these figures were immortalized in stone, they were American giants in full flesh and blood, gallant men whose intrepid deeds unleashed the greatest leap of human advancement the world has ever known. And tonight I will tell you, and most importantly, the youth of our nation, the true stories of these great, great men. And he goes on and he gives a short bio of each of the four men on Mount Rushmore. And it was awesome. It was a proud, unashamed defense of America. And people are desperate for this. People are so desperate for a recalibration back to who we are. It's just been decades and decades of these lies about who we are. We're racist and horrible and sexist, all this other nonsense. And I think people are just like confused and lost, and they're desperate for leadership to say like, no, that's wrong. This is who we are. And the Republicans have a chance this week to do it right. They have a chance to not just tell, but show the truth about America. I want to give an example of how to do that next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I want to give an example of what I think this could look like in the convention for the rest of the week if the Republicans do this right. And Trump's speech at Mount Rushmore, again, was a model for it, which is why I have a little bit of hope that this may go well the next couple of days. Go back and read Trump's Mount Rushmore speech. It was on the 4th of July. Don't watch it. Trump's not great at reading the teleprompter. Actually, no one is, right? That's why so many of these speeches, if you read a lot of these speeches, they're great. They're really, really good. But when you have a regular person who's not trained in this thing, right? And they go up and they're nervous, obviously, the whole country's watching, but they just read the prompter, right? It's a total disconnect from the viewer and their heart when there's a teleprompter involved, right? And I think when people are watching a teleprompter reader, and it's not even the reading, it's the, how do they say, like, good evening. My name is, it's like, come on, man, just like relax. All right, like talk to a person, not to the millions, the throngs. Just talk to a person like you're hanging out. And again, disconnects from the heart. And I think people subconsciously feel like you don't really believe what you're saying when it's being read like that, because like people know that, oh, this is being rehearsed, or this has been rehearsed and it's being read and they don't really mean it. And there's like a mistrust issue when someone's reading from the teleprompter. But anyway, let me tell us a little story of George Washington. Let me say this first, actually. I think about this a lot, and I don't know if you agree with this or whatever, but I like to think of two alternate realities, right? I'll give a couple examples. So I don't know what that sound is. Did that come up on the TV? I updated my computer, software, whatever, and it just keeps making that noise, and I don't know what it is. It's like that episode of Modern Family when Phil can't find out what that smoke detector is. He doesn't know what smoke detector is. I've closed all my windows. I've restarted everything. It won't shut up. Sorry. I think of two alternate realities. One reality where I didn't update my computer, and it doesn't make that sound, and another when it makes it all the time. Just think of one person who, right? So it's one person, two alternate realities, and everything is equal in these realities, right? At least at the start. In one of these worlds, this person listens to nothing but rap music pulsing through their brain all day long, right? They're just listening to Cardi B nonstop on loop. The next person, same person in every way, parallel universe, they listen to nothing but John MacArthur sermons and hymns. Their lives will be completely different after 30 days because the inputs that you put in your brain affect your soul, which affects your thoughts, which affect your actions. And you'll be different people at the end of those 30 days just because of that one input. I'm convinced of that. And I think the same thing, right? You think of someone who, parallel universes, this person every night watches 3 hours of Netflix. They watch Netflix for 3 hours every night and they go to bed tired because they're addicted and they can't stop, and then they sleep in and they're late for the entire day, versus the exact same person in a parallel universe who, instead of Netflix, reads a book for 2 hours, gets to bed an hour early so they can wake up early, refreshed, and work out in the morning. Those are two totally different people after 30 days in their different parallel universes. Make sense? I think about that a lot. And I think it's the same thing with America. If Americans are told two different stories about our country, in the first story, the progressive story, the story that kids are literally being taught today, George Washington was a slave-owning hypocrite. He was an evil and terrible person. Nothing more needs to be said than slave owner. That's it. That's the ultimate scarlet letter. George Washington was nothing but a slave owner. And kids just hear that for their entire childhoods. Or that's one parallel universe. That's what we teach in our schools. Or we tell our kids that the ethos of America, the American story, is the story of this amazing man whose father died when he was 11, but his mom was an incredibly strong woman. I mean, you could argue that the story of America is the story of George Washington's mom. So George Washington's mom, her dad died when she was 3. So her mom raised her, but then she passed away when she was 12. So she was orphaned when she was fatherless at 3, orphaned at 12. She moved in with her half-sister, who was a strong Christian, and that's what gave her this strong inner strength. So she obviously grew up, and then her husband died, and she never remarried. She raised all 5 kids herself, including young George, and ran the farm. And she couldn't afford to send George or any of the kids to school in London or anywhere. So George Washington never got a really formal education, but she was sure to teach her kids honor and integrity and how to be a gentleman. So that strength, that dignity, that courage, that grace, that came from George's mom. Well, it came from 3 things. It came from George's mom, it came from the legacy that his father left, and the role model of his older brother. So think about those 3 influences on George Washington's life. Role model of older brother, legacy of the father, and strength of the mother. That made George Washington who he was. And then he took that and became this incredible leader and took a group of just like the ragtag farmers that you could possibly fathom, fought against the most powerful military on the planet. That nighttime raid crossing the Delaware River, freezing cold, Christmas Day, no shoes, low morale. Like, It's one of the most amazing stories in history. People were deserting. All hope was lost. And then General Washington, he read Thomas Paine's letter to his men. These are the times that try men's souls. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Beautiful letter from Thomas Paine, and the men get all fired up. They cross the icy Delaware in 3 different groups, right? And it was an impossible feat. Like it was, by all accounts, a terrible idea to do this. The other 2 groups didn't even make it. The ice was too thick or the boats were too heavy. They had to put all this artillery on the boats and the boats were sinking in the freezing cold river. They didn't even make it. There's no way this should have worked. But George Washington's group made it across. And they won this skirmish. And it completely turned the tide of the revolution. And then we won. And then he went back to his farm. And people begged him to be president. And he reluctantly did. And then he gave it back up so he could go back to his farm. Who is this man? Who is this guy? This guy's crazy. He's an unbelievable man. Who is he? This is who we are. This is who we are. We are George Washington. That's the story we need to tell our kids. These stories matter. So you tell our kids and everyone in this country that we're founded by a racist slave owner, okay? That's one parallel universe. Or that there was an incredible man of nearly unprecedented moral integrity who founded this country. Depending on which story you believe, that will change you. And it changes what kind of defense you'll make of this country. You're not gonna defend what you don't understand. And you're not gonna defend what you don't love. Now, yes, of course, there's nuance to history, of course, but what's your starting point? Is George Washington in this country first and foremost racist with, okay, maybe fine, some good things happen from here and there? Or is George Washington in this country first and foremost something to be honored and revered and defended? Yes, of course, with some bad things that have happened that need some addressing and correction over time to reach this ideal that these founders put out there. If people don't understand America, you won't defend it. You don't defend something you don't love. You won't defend something that's bad. You won't defend something you have no connection to. So there it is, Jared. I'm telling you. So Trump shared a story of all 4 of the people on Mount Rushmore: Washington, Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, and Jefferson. And then he said this: no movement that seeks to dismantle these treasured American legacies can possibly have a love of America at its heart. No person who remains quiet at the destruction of this resplendent heritage can possibly lead us to a better future. By the way, don't put the word resplendent in a speech. No one uses that word. They want to silence us, but we will not be silenced. We'll state the truth in full, without apology. We declare that the United States of America is the most just and exceptional nation ever to exist on earth. And then Trump laid out all the reasons why. Our Judeo-Christian values, the American family, how it's the bedrock of American life, equality of opportunity, equal justice, free and open debate as opposed to cancel culture, respecting the flag. He said, we stand tall, we stand proud, and we only need an almighty God. I think that was maybe the last line of the whole speech. And the media, if Trump does that, he should do that this week, and everyone speaking should do that same message this week, and the media is gonna call it dark and disturbing. Good. The darker and more disturbing, the better. True story. Mike Slater. We're going to talk about Kenosha coming up next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater, I just want to change gears a little bit, and we'll head to Kenosha here. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Of course, you heard by now, police officer. I don't know if 2 officers opened fire or fired their weapons, or it was just the one, but this man, a black man, was shot 7 times. Kenosha, it's in between Chicago and Milwaukee. It's right on the waters of Lake Michigan, so very, very southeast Wisconsin. About 100,000 people. The city's 10% black, so it's about average for the country. Jacob Blake is the man's name. And I'll make the point right up front. We know nothing about anything. We don't know anything. You know nothing, and I don't mean to be insulting to you. I know you know nothing, but I want you to know that no one knows anything. And people are going to talk like they know something, but they know nothing. No one knows anything. But the media still has lines like this. Residents of Kenosha are now calling for the firing of the cops who pulled the trigger on Blake for what appeared to be no just reason. You have no idea. You have no idea. And there's riots and the whole thing again, and people have no clue what happened. We have a cell phone video, that's it. Now, I should say the first thing I saw, guys, do you have the freeze frame? The first thing I saw was this picture before I even saw the video. Now, doesn't that picture make it like, well, this is what I assumed. I just assumed that that was the moment when the police officer shot him. Right? Walking in front of his car. That picture almost looks like he's running a little bit. I saw another picture where it made it even look more like he was standing. But it looks like that was the moment he was shot. That's not it. That wasn't the moment. They stopped. I don't know why they took that freeze frame, right? You watch the video, the 17-second video, and Blake makes it all the way to the driver's side, opens up the door, and I don't know if he reaches in or tries to get in or whatever, and that's when the officer shoots. But we have no idea anything. We don't know what was said. We don't know why anyone was even there. Why were the officers called? If you can't tell me why the officers were called, just at the very beginning of this, then you can't say anything. Why was Blake there? What did the officers see? What did the officers know? What was in the car? What did they think was in the car? What did they know was in the car? You know nothing. It's amazing to me the lengths that people will go to make up a story in their head. Because that's what we do. We just make up movies in our head and then we get outraged by it. The problem is, especially in Twitter land, but everywhere, because the media is Twitter now. That was one of Barry Weiss's point, is that the New York Times is Twitter now. But Ben Shapiro made this point that waiting on details and background information in a controversial situation is actively discouraged. Right? You cannot wait. If you wait, you'll be labeled as uncaring. If you wait, you'll be labeled as racist because you're not coming down on the side of justice or whatever. And then, so you got to come down, you got to be against it. And then, or against the cops specifically. And then when the facts slowly come out, if they don't match up with whatever movie you made up in your head, it's all just ignored. Hands up, don't shoot is still a rallying cry. Hands up, don't shoot is still a hymn that is sung at the religious gatherings that are these protests across the country. Michael Brown never said it. Never said it. He never said hands up, don't shoot. Never put his hands up. None of that ever happened. It is completely a movie that people made up in their head. And I felt for this too. I was talking about this on the radio yesterday. And I saw the video maybe 3 times. And I thought, and I would have testified, I would have put good money that actually, let me ask you, what color was the car? Can you guys don't put the picture yet, but can you guys get that ready? What color was the car of the video you just saw? I would have said it was white. And I would have put good money on that was a white car. That he was trying to get back in a white car. My brain, the movie that was in my head, he was in a white car. You guys want to throw it back up? Gray. Right? So I just made up this movie in my head. I saw it and then made up something different in my head. That's why eyewitness testimony is almost useless. But it doesn't matter. When the truth comes out about these things, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that can come out of the George Floyd case, the trial, that will matter an iota to anyone who already made up their mind, and everybody already made up their mind. Shapiro said, we have no idea what the suspect was doing before the video. We have no idea if he was armed, if they knew there was a gun in the car, but none of this matters on Twitter or in the rest of the media. But the Democratic governor of Wisconsin had to come out and say this. He had to say, do you guys have it? How did he put the beginning part? It was like, while we do not have all the details yet, should have stopped there. You could have stopped there. You can drop that down, guys. Could have stopped there, right? Should have said, we don't know all the details yet. That's it. But if he did, he'd be uncaring. He'd be very uncaring. So he can't. Has to come out and make a statement against the police. Sorry, guys, you can throw it back up. But what we know for certain, he's not the first black man or person to have been shot or injured or mercilessly killed at the hands of individuals and law enforcement in our state or our country. This is what's so weird about that too. He put shot, injured, and killed all together. Like that's a pretty wide grouping of things. And then he didn't just say killed, he said mercilessly killed. We have no idea how much mercy the police showed him before that 17-second video. That's the point. We don't have all the details yet. Not according to me. According to the governor, we don't have all the details yet. So stop talking. And I don't know how this thing turns out. I'm not saying one thing or the other. I know there's a lot of people getting mad at me right now for saying this. Oh, Slater, how dare you? I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. That's my point. This could be way worse than you even think. Like if you're on the Black Lives Matter side or whatever, and you think this is like, oh, this is outrage. It could be even worse than you think. You think this is an outrageous thing? It could be worse. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe these two cops were driving around thinking, hey, let's go kill a black guy. Let's find a black guy to kill. And they found him, and they went over and they shot him. And this could be the most cold-blooded murder in the history of the country. It could be even worse than the movie you're making up in your head. Or this could be these police officers who knew that this guy just 5 years ago was at a bar and got in a fight and pulled out a handgun and waved at a bunch of people. And then when he left, he pointed the gun through the window. And then when police finally got there, they got in some tussle with police officers. One of the officers got injured, and they had to stick a police dog on him in order to take him down. And maybe they literally saw a handgun in the driver's seat of the car. Right? Who knows? We don't know. We don't have time to play it now, but I found this video the other day of, I don't know when or where, but a guy was pulled over for drunk driving. And two police officers, they gave him the test or whatever. And then they tried to arrest him, tried to handcuff him, and he resisted. And real quick on the resisting arrest. People will always resist arrest because jail sucks. The only way we're gonna stop people from resisting arrest is if jail is Disneyland. If jail becomes awesome, then a police officer would go up to someone and say, sir, you're under arrest. And they'd say, awesome, thanks. That's great. I love jail. Food is delicious. The roller coaster you guys built the other day, I love the log ride, the Splash Mountain ride. It's great. I love jail. Can't wait to go. Make the handcuffs tighter. Hurry up. Take me right there. All right, but jail's awful. So people are always going to resist arrest, just like this guy did, where they tased him. So he ran away. They got away from him, started fighting on the ground. He got up. The police officers tased him. It was right on the side of the highway. Police officers tased him. They kept fighting. He's like, okay, all right. They try to he squirms away from them, runs in front of his car, reaches into his car window, pulls out a gun, shoots the cops. All right? You have no idea what it's like to be a police officer. Those cops do. August 8th. So this is like 2 weeks before this happened. In Kenosha, a police officer was called to an entry of vehicle complaint. Right? Some guy, I don't know what that means, trying to steal cars or snooping through cars or whatever. So the cop shows up, and whoever was there, snooping through cars or whatever, shot the police officer in the stomach and ran away. In Kenosha. They ended up catching him. But that just happened. No one has any idea what it's like to be a police officer. And all these people who are like, oh, you should have done this, should have done that. You don't even know if they did. People are like, oh, you should have used a taser. Maybe they already did. I don't know. You don't know. You have no idea what you're talking about. And that's fine. That's fine. That's my point. I'm not like, maybe I should, like, that came across poorly. Like, you have no idea it's not even that. It's like, oh, like, you just have no idea. Like, I don't either. We don't know yet. And that's okay. Just admit it. And let's wait for some details to come out. Because like I said, it may be even worse than you're imagining, in which case, I'm with you. But let's just wait and base whatever conclusion you're making on something. All right, gotta go. Convention, day 2. We'll see if they get more Maximos. Right, that's all we need. Republicans, please, for the love of Pete, just no more politicians. I don't need to hear from any politicians. I can't think of anything interesting that a politician would say. It's not like we don't hear from these people all the time anyway. Give me some stories about America. Throw up some regular people who want to share their amazing story about how this country is the best country on the planet. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.